Hello friends, welcome to another vlog. Today let's talk about motorcycles. So one of the questions that somebody asked me a while ago was why did I pick the bike that I picked? Let me tell you a little bit about my history with motorcycles. Started out riding way long ago on an old Sportster. It's 1974. So I had an old cruiser that I started on, took the thing everywhere, really enjoyed it, but it was more work maintaining it than I cared to do, which really says a lot because I really like working on things. So after I got rid of that, I got a Yamaha Seika, which I think was 500 or 600 cc's. I don't really remember. I didn't have it that long. But it was a neat little bike. Totally stripped it and just rode it around. It was transportation. I had a number of cars too, which I don't even want to get into between the time I started driving and then, but that's not what this video is about. So maybe we'll talk about cars another time. I got away from riding for a while because I lived in a lot of areas where riding wasn't very practical or it wasn't possible due to weather or the area or whatever. But right around 2000, I decided to get back into it, and I pretty much had a bike ever since. I traded a Daytona for a Ducati 900 SS and some cash, and that was an interesting bike. Very temperamental, very personality-driven bike. It ran when it wanted to, not when I wanted it to, but when it ran, it was something. That one got me a lot of triple-digit tickets. Got me in a lot of trouble. Spent a lot of time in court over that bike. So I got rid of it because I had to, because I was not legally allowed to ride a motorcycle anymore. After I moved, I petitioned and petitioned and petitioned and petitioned, and eventually found a judge who was willing to give me an opportunity to re-earn my license, basically, which was a great kindness, I think, on his part. So I bought a CBR 1000, and I had to ride that for a year without getting any tickets or getting in trouble or causing any general mayhem or not getting caught doing it. I rode that bike for a while, and then had a bit of an accident where I fell and crushed my ankle, which meant I had a really hard time shifting it after that point. So I sold that one because it was impractical to have something that you can't use, you can't ride, you can't do anything with because you can't operate it. So I got rid of that and figured I was done and accepted my fate and said I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not something I can do. And then someone introduced me to the mega scooters, the Silverwings and the Bergmans, and I gave one a try, and I bought a Silverwing, and it's basically a 600cc scooter. It's a pretty fast bike. It will do highway speeds. It just doesn't need you to shift it. So it worked fairly well for me for a while, but then there were some problems with it that I just didn't care to fix anymore, and I parked it and knew I wanted to get something else. So I started working to be able to shift a real bike again and figure out a way to do that. So I found out there are a lot of options for a heel toe shifter, which takes some of the weight off of pulling and pushing on the clutch, which made it really practical for me to be able to drive a bike again. So I started looking, and there are a number of bikes out there that I looked at. I looked at the Yamaha Bolt, which I really liked, but there was no path with that bike. You couldn't go anywhere from the Bolt. You could get some performance options, but in doing some research, this is what changed my mind. I looked at maybe getting another sport bike, and then I realized that I can't afford $1,000 tickets anymore. And I don't want to afford $1,000 tickets anymore, and all the points of my license and my insurance being extremely high. So I figured I would stick with a cruiser, and I had the option to get pretty much any cruiser I wanted. I could have gone out and found anything and probably figured out a way to get it, but I went with the Iron 883. Now, ideally, this video would be great for me to do on the bike, but I have not been able to record on it, and I don't feel comfortable doing that yet, because I haven't ridden for a while, and I need to get more comfortable with that before I start recording on it. I may start doing that. I may not. I'm not sure yet. But the 883 and the 1200 and the Sportster line were something I considered. And the Dyno was the other one that I considered. I was thinking maybe I would get a Softail, one of the Lowrider S's or something like that, or I'm not even sure, because I didn't do that much research beyond that, because I realized the price was getting to a point where it becomes an issue where I live. In my state, you have to pay sales tax and usage tax based on the value of the vehicle. So if your vehicle costs more, you pay more usage tax every year. And that decreases as the price of the object decreases, the car, the bike, whatever, Jeep, decreases. So I already pay a pretty significant amount of money for one car, the truck, the Jeep, and whatever else I got laying around at the time. But when I go into the DMV, it's a lot. So when I started considering every year, after I'd isolated down the fact that I was probably going to have to get a Sportster, if I got the 1200, I would actually have to pay more every year than if I got the 883. And in doing research, I realized that you can fairly easily upgrade the 883 to 1200 without too much work, and it costs about $1,000 to get it to do it. I don't think it's probably more to get it done, but I think it costs about, I think the kit's about $1,000. I haven't looked at the price in a while, but in doing so, my VIN number still stays as an 883. The appraised value of my bike still stays as an iron, so it doesn't go up, and I don't have to pay more money every month for basically the same bike. A 1200 conversion kit on an Iron 883 will make it very similar to a 1200 Sportster. The gearing is a little different. There's some other differences because one of my friends has a 1200 and he's really happy with it. I guess off the line the 883 conversion is quicker, but in the top end the 1200 actual will catch up with it and eventually pass it. But I'm okay with that. I don't really intend to go that fast. I don't have anybody that will be riding on it with me, so I'm not worried about that. So I don't have to worry about covering a passenger. I have some friends that I ride with occasionally, but they have their own bikes, so I don't have to worry about that. And I can keep up with them if I want to, even now, so I don't really have a problem. But the disadvantages and differences from what I'm used to on a sport bike coming down to the cruiser is I have a lot less lean angle, a little bit less aggressive takeoff, shorter power band. I don't have that huge availability in the RPM range, where you can get up over 10K on some bikes and even higher on others. But that's okay. It's not meant to do that, and I'm fine with that. Now, the other question some people have asked me is a Sportster a good starter bike? And I guess I would have to say I'm more on the fence that any bike can be a good starter bike, because if you're aware that you lack the rider ability to utilize a bike to its fullest, then you just have to be more mindful of the throttle. When I got my Ducati, it was an easy transition, because even though it was 900 cc's, it was a lot of power. Of course, nowadays it's a trivial amount of power, but back then it was a good amount of power for a road bike. It was smooth delivery, it was very easy to control, it was very easy to tell it exactly what you wanted it to do, and it would do exactly what you told it to do. It's a very precision bike. The CBR that I got was kind of like riding a donkey up until about 65, 70 miles an hour. And then after that, it was a very precision bike. Keeping in mind that CBR I bought used, because I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to stay in the law and not speed, or, well, not get caught. So I didn't pay a lot of money for it, and I bought it used, and the parts probably could have been replaced. Bearings probably needed to be done. There were some other things that probably needed to be fixed. But I wasn't really looking to repair it. I did the chain myself and a few other things. I probably would have swapped out the tires, because I was never fond of them. But they did the job, and they were stable at pretty much any speed that I needed to go. We'll just leave it at that. But anyway, if, even as a returning rider, I would have bought an R3, or if I would have bought a 250 Rebel or 300 or whatever they are now, would I have been happy with it? I'd have been happy to ride. I would have been happy to ride for 6 months. And then when I realized that everything else on the road was faster than me, and everything else on the road was, well, out accelerating me. That's the difference. And that's the key point. With a smaller displacement, low power bike, sometimes you can't get out of situations that you need to get out of. The brake is not always going to save you. It's a good tool to have. It's very good to know how to use it. But sometimes you need to be able to get around things. And with a small displacement bike, you can't always do that. So after 6 months or 7 months or 8 months of riding a bike, and you're used to it, and it's great, and you want something else, what do you do then? You sell your bike, you take an extreme amount of loss on it, unless you bought it very used, and then you go buy the bike you want. And that is a great option as well. But it's not the option I wanted to do. I bought a bike that has, in my area at least, reasonable resale value, very much of an appeal to me, very customizable. So, and that's another key issue. Excuse me. If you buy your standard sports bike, an R6, an R1, a 600 GSX, or anything like that, the customization options you have, I'm not going to say they're limited, because that sounds like a really bad thing, but you don't get to do everything you want to do with it. You can't make it look like something else. You can't do a whole lot with a sport bike. There's just not much there to do. You can dress it up, you can do a lot of things with it. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you can't customize your bike. I'm just saying that the standard platform that you have is going to be the standard platform that you end up with. underneath all the decorations and all the other stuff you put on it, it's going to be an R6. It's going to be what it was. And there's nothing you can really do to change that. You can get different fairings that give it a slightly different look. You can get a new headlight. You can get things like that, and that's great. But you can't turn it into another bike. You can't make it that much different. And with a cruiser, any cruiser, not specifically a Harley, that's a little bit different. There are almost an unlimited amount of options you can do with those. You can take the controls, you can move them forward, you can move them back, you can get different controls, you can get a heel toe shifter like I'm going to get. You can get all kinds of other different things to change the bike and how you want it to be. Now, the thing that I've seen with the iron is that everybody does the same thing. And that kind of makes me sad, but that just means when you make a different one, it's that much more special and that much more unique, because everybody takes the mirrors and puts them underneath. Everybody does the headlight. Everybody does the tank lift. Everybody does XXXXX. It's like a formula that most Sportster riders do, and there's nothing wrong with it. If it makes you happy and it's your bike and you're proud of it, awesome. I don't want to fault you for that. I'm just saying everybody does the same thing. So, if you buy a used Sportster, and that's what you want to end up on, or a used cruiser, and you want to end up on it, because I know most of them are pretty much the same as far as how the customization patterns work, buy the one you want. And all the stuff will already probably be done on it. The light, the mirrors will probably be flipped down. If it's an iron, the turn signals will probably be moved out. The usual customizations are done because most people do them. But there's a lot of opportunity on a cruiser to do more. I don't see many sport bikes with luggage. I don't see many sport bikes with some of the features that cruisers get. But then again, why would you put 40 pounds of luggage on a bike that's lightweight and meant to go fast? It's counterintuitive to what you're getting, so I understand why people don't do it. And that's really not the avenue I want to go, because I just don't feel the need to go fast anymore. If I ever do, I'll go buy a 600cc sport bike, and I'll be done. And then I'll have a cruiser and a sport bike, and that's all I need. I don't think I need another leader bike, because I think they're ridiculous, and I think they're silly, and there's really no point to have one on the street, and there really isn't. I mean, I ride my sport bikes in an extremely aggressive manner, and I probably top them out a lot. So, and I don't really see the need to buy another one, because the new 600s are pretty much capable of doing everything that you need them to do. Regardless of what you want to do, the extra weight and the extra other things that you pay for in a 1000 are usually not typically something anybody's going to need. The only difference is what I've seen is usually the leader bikes are put together a little bit better and have a little bit more quality materials. If you go into a dealership and you look at a R6, maybe not Yamaha, because Yamaha is usually pretty good about this, but Honda's usually not. If you look at the 600 and you feel the fairings, and you feel the front and the back of the fairings, and you check out the entire bodywork of the bike, all the lines, everything like that, it's going to look great, it's going to be great. But then if you go look at the 1K and you do the same thing, you're going to notice the fairings are better made, the fit and finish is better. So there's a price difference, but the price difference is eaten up in quality and in quantity of things you get. So there is that, but really I can't see the need to do a leader bike on the street anymore, unless it's a cruiser and then you just need it for the distance, for durability. basically, so that it doesn't have to work so hard. But then again, most cruisers could probably get by with 6th gear, so most don't have them, and it would be plenty happy. So anyway, the reason I picked the Iron 883 Sportster over everything else was I wanted a bike from Harley. I wanted another Harley. I plan on keeping it forever, and I wanted one that was upgradable, and I wanted one that would not kill me on taxes and insurance. Well, my insurance is trivial now. I'm an old guy, so my insurance doesn't really it's not even a factor anymore. My insurance is like double digits for the year, pretty much. So it's not horrible. And that comes with being older, having taken many rider courses and things of that nature. So now, if you do plan on riding a bike, make sure you take the rider's course. I didn't take it when I started, and honestly I wish I did, because I've developed so many bad habits figuring things out on my own and learning from other people who had figured it out on their own, that the difference between what I was doing before and what I was doing after was night and day. Thinking about how I would corner before I took the rider's courses, and even the advanced rider courses, and even the track courses, it was sloppy, it was inefficient, it was just probably dangerous to me more than anything. And I don't know if dangerous is the right word, but probably not optimal. Taking the rider's courses will give you confidence, it'll give you control, it'll give you the knowledge that you need to not be put in situations usually that are going to cause you a problem. When I had the CBR fall on my leg, I did, and this was after the courses, this was a stupid thing, ride for years and years and years and years, and I got distracted. I don't know if I was tired, if there was something going on, or what. I wasn't impaired, but I might have been tired and not paying attention. But I was going around a roundabout, and the one thing you have to realize when you ride a motorcycle is that where you're looking is where you're going to go. And something on the ground caught my eye, which is probably the worst thing you can do in a slow speed situation. And even in my head, the entire time that I was doing this maneuver around a roundabout, which isn't complicated, I was telling myself to stop looking at the thing. But something, I don't know, it was a coin or something shiny, or I don't even remember what it was. But as I was going around the turn, I looked down, I saw this thing and focused on it, and I actually made a very tight seashell loop around and pretty much just went down because I was not going fast enough to go around the corner anymore. And the whole time in my head I'm screaming at myself to look up, but it was too late. I watched it go, maybe I thought it was going to hit the tire or something. I don't recall. This was a long time ago. I watched it go past the bike, and I actually focused on it as it went back to the bike, and I actually, as I was turning, and when I turned the bike, I turned around it and came down on it. So it's one of those things where in the end it's just not what you want to have happen. And it was kind of embarrassing that that amount of riding time that I did it, and what came out of it was even worse, because you work so hard to get your license back, you work so hard to overcome all that crap you had in your past, and then you screw up and break your ankle doing something stupid, and that puts you out of commission. So it kind of sucked, but I'm not afraid to tell you guys that. because I want you to understand that nobody's perfect and you have to be vigilant all the time. And I think somebody told me one time that there's a peak in the probability that you're going to have an accident that spikes around a point when you would gain confidence, that you first get that confidence about riding a motorcycle. And I didn't believe it, because I'd ridden for a long time and then it stopped, and then I started again, and it was right about that time when I started to really feel comfortable again, really feel like I knew what I was back where I needed to be. And that was probably the most dangerous time I could possibly be, because I didn't think I was going to ever have a problem, and that's what I did. But you know, it is one of those things where it's like you got two choices. I didn't have a choice, but usually in those cases you have two choices. Especially in a low-speed accident, you usually get away from those with some scratches and a lesson learned. I wasn't so fortunate, but in those cases you got two choices. You can either get up, get back on it, and continue riding, or you can say, I don't want this to happen again, and give up. I would say get back on it and keep riding, because if you don't face your fears will overcome you. Anyway, I think I've talked enough about other auxiliary stuff. Is the Iron 883 or Sportster 1200 a good bike for a new rider? Mine would be, because it's comfortable, it's stable, it's very confidence inspiring, everything on it works and everything fits me. And that's my key point for anybody to buy a bike, in my opinion. Is it what you want? Is it comfortable? Or is it stable? And are you able to control it reasonably well and control yourself? I don't think I'd start a new rider on a Hayabusa, but hey, if you want a Hayabusa and now you want that to be your first bike, I know a lot of people who started out on those and they're still doing fine. You just have to make sure you restrict that throttle. And somebody was even telling me that the new leader bikes and some of the new bikes actually have different modes where you can restrict the throttle ability so that it rides much calmer. And that's another benefit. I mean, I don't know if that's made it into some of the 600s and less, but if you can, say, change the mode of your bike so that the timing is reduced, so that the power is reduced, then what's the point of buying a smaller bike if you're emulating a smaller bike? The big argument comes in with dropping your bike. Most new people drop their bikes. It happens. You don't understand how the kickstand works. You don't understand how to park it. You don't understand where to park it. I've seen people park poorly in parking spots and get whacked by their cars and knocked over. Low speed, so there's no real problem, but if you buy a fancy bike, you want to keep it looking nice, buy the bike, set aside the money right off the bat before you buy it. Get out there, buy replacement fairings from China or wherever that are cheap. Take the original fairings off, put those on, put some frame sliders on it, and you can drop that bike all day long and not care. Well, maybe, I don't know. Some people care about some money, and that's okay. But you're not destroying your original fairings, which are very expensive, and that reduces your problems. Now, oh, sorry, I don't know what's going on with me today. I've been doing this all day. The thing you do need to realize about riding a motorcycle is, or purchasing a motorcycle is, make sure you can afford it, pay cash if possible. If you're financing it, make sure you understand what you're financing. It's an entirely different episode by somebody probably much more fluent in accounting than I am to talk to you about. But before you even sign the contract, check your insurance, because I have had some bikes where my insurance was extreme. at certain ages. Now I can pretty much buy any bike I want and it doesn't matter. But also understand the restrictions that your insurance puts in place. In my state, I cannot get a medical policy on my rider's insurance. So I have to have my health insurance to cover my rider's accident if I have one. That's something to consider. So there is that. And if you do get a bike, make sure you wave to everybody, be a nice guy, and don't be an asshole. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you guys later. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope some people found it educational. I hope it helped somebody, or at least entertained some people. Who knows? But I will talk to you guys later. Tonight we'll play some more games. If you're watching this and you watch my channel, tonight we're doing some test Xbox stuff to get the resolutions down and things like that. So that may be interesting. There'll probably be a few videos to show different qualities of things coming from my Razer device. So we'll get into that later. But if you want to stop by all means, stop by. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys then. See ya.